You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Al Padilla, and this is episode 444, a tried and true tradition here on the Cantina Cast. This is our final hype episode that we do prior to a major show, television event, movie, whatever it may be coming out, where we kind of give you the tale of the tape, break everything down that we know so far, and just get you hyped up for whatever is to come. And we are on the cusp of the premiere of the series of Andor. 3 episodes will be released, I think, 2 a.m. our time, my time. So that's like quick math, I don't know, 5 a.m. if we stay up to watch these things. So I don't know yet. That'll probably be the last question we ask. Hey, are you staying up? But
no.
Speaking of, okay, he's already answering no. Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, thanks for being here. And word is on the street that you will not be staying up till 5 a.m. watching these episodes. Is that true? Can you confirm that?
I can confirm that. That is absolutely true.
Okay.
I've stayed up before for some of these, but man, it's just a little too much. And I've got so little sleep the last 5 days that it's not going to happen and still function to wake up at 5:30 tomorrow.
Yeah. It seems like there is a breaking point with these things. Like I can do one show, I can do 2 shows, but man, 3 at 2 a.m. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't sleep much as it is, but that's still pretty rough when, you're expected to, I don't know, contribute to society and work the next day. Just doesn't bode well for me.
Or like more suggestions anyway to contribute to society. You don't really need that.
Yeah.
But hey, we're on the precipice, man. This is it. We made it. Congratulations. Well done, sir.
Thank you to you too. Congratulations on the show.
Thanks. Hey, how many pumpkin spice lattes you got over there today?
I only have one. He saw me double fisting 2 Starbucks cups, but that one was the one from yesterday. So I do have my. I'm already getting caffeinated here, so should be good to roll.
You're back to the old faithful. No more straying off the line here.
I took a break. I had a you saw I think it was last show I had a ice mocha. But yeah, I'm back on the track again, so get my stuff together with the pumpkin spice.
I was a little worried about you, so I'm glad that we're there. Hey, quick news though before we get into this, and it's actually Andor related. So there's some Tony Gilroy interviews going around out there, of course, and supposedly season 2 of Andor might not be until, quite honestly, might not be towards the end of 2024. If you can believe that. So the rough news is that they are going to start filming in November, but filming usually goes, I think he's expecting filming to go through August.
Yeah.
And if you use the show as a baseline of what they did this time, it took them about another year to finish it up after that. So I don't know if it'll take quite that long the second time around, but it shows you when you're doing on-location shooting, it just takes that much more time and effort, money, resources, everything to go into it to make this work. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. So it's not something they can just pump out every year, one after another. When you're going to do it like this, you got to take a lot of time and care and effort to do it.
I hope they don't take that long. At the same time, I'm of the opinion that whatever it takes, it takes. That's why I think companies like Blizzard and some of these other companies do really well with their games because they don't feel, obliged to have to hit certain deadlines. Although as a stockholder, I mean, that probably would bother me if it went too far, but it's not a reasonable ask given that we're already in the fall. We're getting season 1. They need time to film. We get season 2. We got plenty of Star Wars between now and then. So I think we're okay. I think that's, sucks, but hey, I think that's probably the worst case scenario too. Like you said, I mean, maybe COVID I know COVID had something to do with it because they were kind of in the midst of a lot of the shooting for this one when that was going on. So maybe they'll get it expedited just a little bit there.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it seems like a long time to wait, but again, by the time we get to the end of this, it'll be close to the end of the year or ish. But still 2 years, that's a long time, man. That's a really long time. I mean, if you think about how long we've waited for Mandalorian by the time it comes out, is that starting to push a year and a half? I think. But we had Book of Boba Fett. That doesn't really count. But I mean, so it's a stretch. It is a stretch, especially for season 2, But if you think about Netflix and just the streaming service, like The Witcher, all these other shows, Game of Thrones, I mean, how long did they have between seasons? Sometimes they were pretty considerable. So I don't think this is abnormal or anything to worry about. It's just kind of what it takes to do these things now, especially 12 episodes. We have to keep reminding ourselves of that.
Well, yeah, it's like you brought up a good point, and I think it's probably the lead in this, in my opinion. But it's 12 episodes, but 12 episodes of tried and true conventional filmmaking, where they're going to have practical sets and on locations shooting, and all of that takes time. I think once we've had a chance to get these first 3 episodes under our belt, we're going to understand how different this feels and looks, because it is that, and I think everybody's going to be okay with it and go, okay, this makes sense. If we've got to wait, then for this quality, I guess is where I'm digging at. But we'll talk more about that here in just a bit.
Yep. So before we get started, a hearty welcome to those in the live stream with us. If you're listening to this after the fact, well, we hope you've enjoyed Andor by the time you listen to it. But we do a live stream. Jonathan, Steph, Rob, Jennifer, new face in the chat as well. So some others in the background there. So come say hi to us in the stream if you would like to. And then, of course, a quick shout out to our Patreon subscribers, ktthecast.com/Patreon. If you're interested in taking a look at any of those, you do get some exclusive content. Lots of great stuff over there. Now a part of the tribe. Mike, Kathy, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, and Justin. And then, of course, our Delusions of Grandeur tier. Said it right that time. Mr. Rod, thank you so much. And thank you for all of our Patreons and everyone who just listens to the show. Everything you guys do, and you hit the like buttons and all that good stuff. Everything helps us out, so we certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. If you get a chance to, if you're an Apple podcast subscriber,
leave a review.
Yeah, leave a review if you could, please. We would appreciate those. And yeah, I think that's it. Let's get into this. Let's talk about Andor. So again, the final hype show is kind of a recap of everything, and we usually start off with what we've been calling the tail of the tape. And so some of this has come, now that the first 3 episodes have been previewed. I think the screeners went out. They had the red carpet premiere last week. So we've got some more information. So everything that we're going to talk about is technically non-spoiler. So I want to make that clear. It is stuff that has been released officially by Lucasfilm or Disney or has come up recently in interviews. But we will not be talking about the actual episodes themselves. So if you are super sensitive to spoilers, you may not want to listen to the show because it may not be relevant by the time you watch the series. But yeah, we'll try to stay away from that stuff as much as possible.
But it should be safe.
Yeah, we're not going to do anything here. Okay, so we already know, right? 12 episodes in season 1. We get the first episode tomorrow. This is so weird. It's taken us all the way through November 23rd is when that last episode is scheduled, which is crazy to think about. That's just 2 days or a day before Thanksgiving.
Right.
So this is a long ride. A slow ride is what I think a lot of people are saying. We talked about season 2 officially confirmed, coming in 2024, probably at the very latest, but who knows? Now, interesting enough, and I mentioned this in the last, I think it was the last episode we talked about, I had saw the screen times for the episodes. So tell me what you think about this, Jonesy.
All right.
The first episode's 39 minutes. The second episode is 35. Episode 3 is 40 minutes, and then 4 jumps up to 47 minutes. So this in line with what you were expecting going into the series?
Yeah, I think so. I think we were looking at on average somewhere in this 40 to 42 minute range, most likely high 30s to low 40s.
Right. So
I think that's hitting the mark. 35 seems to be a little on the short side, but we've had that before and they've worked. And we actually know a little bit about the pacing of the first couple of episodes, and as well as when we get into episodes 3 and 4. And so we'll touch briefly on some of those just to set expectations, I think, for people when they go into watching these. But I think, I think overall, I'm not too worried about that. I think that's exactly what we want. Again, 12 episodes of this, that's 6 hours of content, 6+ hours of content for the first season. I think that's feeling pretty good to me. I think that's going to be a good pace.
Yeah, I like, I like the 12 episodes. More. Yeah, well, so here, I was going to say, I like the idea of having 12 episodes. What really, for me, at the end of the day, makes a difference is how those do they feel like individual episodes? How well are they stitched together? Does it feel like they just broke them up to make it 12 when really it's, I don't know, 6.5, but that's a weird number, or 7.5, but that's a weird number. That's all kind of TBD, right? So, but I'm with you. I mean, at the end of the day, if we get 6.5 hours minimum, that's a pretty darn good Star Wars show, and 6.5 hours we used to not have with Star Wars. So I'll take it all day, every day.
Yeah, I think some of the hard part about that is, again, a half hour every week is a little tough to endure over that long because we are so spoiled these days with releasing content. But again, Disney this has been their MO though. I mean, this is what they do. They give you one a week for each of the shows, and they're good they're solid to great, and really not had many stinkers out there. So I think this is something that still is tried and true. It works. People will stick with it if the content is there, and the early reviews are saying that it's worth sticking around for. So don't go anywhere whenever you're watching these episodes. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Do we want to kind of talk about that pacing, or do we want to wait here just a minute? Because we're kind of talking about.
I think we're gonna when we get into some of the other questions, I think it's gonna come up.
Okay.
So yeah, and I'm with you. We need to talk about that because I've got some opinions on it. But here, so what we also know is those first 3 episodes are kind of a mini arc,
Right?
And so that makes sense, right? They would release all 3 at the same time. I still question why they do that. It could have been at some point they locked in on 3 episodes. They went and edited as 3 episodes, and then realized, wait, we're not going to be able to release these individually once a week because of scheduling issues or whatever it was. And so it's just, I don't know. This is like now what, the 2nd or 3rd series in Star Wars where they've done this. No, now the series is going to be 2 episodes, or the premiere is going to be an extra episode. And to me, that doesn't feel like it was originally planned that way. But because of scheduling conflicts or marketing or whatever they're doing, they decided to bundle them up in some way. So,
And this is why I think the pacing conversation, I hate to keep beating around the bush. Maybe we should just rip the Band-Aid off. Because I think having that 3rd episode this time seems like it's probably pretty critical to keep people on board. So what we're hearing from the early reviews is the first 2 are quite slow. There's a lot of exposition. There's a lot of setting up. But when you get to episodes 3 and then into 4, there are huge payoffs and things pick up to kind of what you would feel. And so there's a lot of, some folks had a little bit of uncertainty as they're watching the first 2. And so I think with that, having that 3rd that starts to deliver and start to really feel like that it really grabs you and puts you in and is like, oh yeah, I'm glad I stuck with it. That type of thing. If we didn't have that 3rd one, I would really be more concerned about what the fan backlash would be. And backlash is such a strong word, but just you know how the fandom is, right? When something, it stinks and we get all excited and we go crazy. But if we have this immediate payoff, we can avoid some of that.
Yeah.
And if I were Lucasfilm and if I saw that, I'm wondering if that is playing into it. Again, we're not spoiling anything, won't tell you what's going on, but that's kind of the early thing. And it seems to be very consistent. Every even high level review I've read has said the same thing. First 2 are pretty slow.
Yeah.
3rd one starts to really deliver, and the 4th one blows your shoes off. Not your socks, but your
socks
shoes.
And just shoes. Your socks stay on.
I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, we got to keep the socks on for later on in the season.
Oh,
so
right,
just your shoes.
You'll lose those.
Right.
Yeah. You'll. So I got a question for you. So not to, and I'm with you. Like I agree with everything you're saying, but to play devil's advocate against Disney or Lucasfilm or the writers in that regard, is this just bad? Like if they've already written all the episodes and then they're going in 0 hour, and I see it feels like 0 hour. I don't know if it's 0 hour, but it feels like 0 hour. They're saying, nope, we're doing all 3 of them because we feel like that's going to be a better story to be told. Is that poor planning? Is that someone not just looking ahead and going, nope, we have definitely solid 3 episodes. They stand on their own. They are still connected. They're going to be well received. Or is that someone not looking at that and going, oh boy, we missed the boat on that one. Really should have bundled these all up and not have created 3 episodes. You get what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. And I guess on some level, I guess it doesn't matter at this point because this is what we ended up getting to on the decision-making tree. But I do get your point though of, was editing still going on, or did we really have a rethinking of things of how the episode, and there were more conversations going on? I don't like false starts, and it kind of feels like this is what happened when we announced the date and then we move it.
Yeah.
I think that paints a bad picture. Either you're ready or you're not, right? And I know that it's a sprint to the finish in pretty much anything. So I'm not naive in that kind of way or delusional, but I think at some point, you have to kind of look at it and say, well, maybe they did want to tweak a few things to make sure that this worked a little bit better. But it seems like it would have had to have been more than just slapping on a third episode. right? Because I mean, they could have done that on the premiere. Hey, you've waited long enough. We're going to give you 3. Surprise! You're welcome. We love you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they could have done that right away. So it does seem like there were other things at play, whether, like you said earlier, whether it was marketing or whatnot. You know, there was something else. But so I try not to get too worked up about some of that because we don't know, and let's just be honest, we're probably never going to find out.
Well, and at the end of and like, do we really like us? I mean, and there are people out there that they've built entire podcasts and shows on this type of thing, but
Right.
it's like I've got Jeff up right now. He says everything about this release seems reactive as opposed to planned. To be honest, I agree. It doesn't really matter, but it comes across as a tad chaotic.
Absolutely.
And I agree, but really, let's be real. What does it really matter to us at the end for us here on the show? No, we're going to watch this thing either
Right.
way.
And once we get rolling, that goes away unless it's a hot mess, right?
Yeah.
And then you start to second guess and question it. But I agree. I don't like, basically putting your laundry out there and showing everyone your dirty laundry. And when you get false starts or you get announcements and then you make changes and then you have some of this ambiguity and then we have no idea what's going on with other shows like Bad Batch. You know, it just looks a little chaotic. I agree with Jeff 100%. And it sounds like we're kind of all on the same page that, let's be clean with our release. We release it on this date and we're good. If you want to sneak a third one in there and say, hey, thanks for sticking with us, that would be great. But that's not what happened here, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. So to play devil's advocate to my own devil's advocate, and this will be the last thing we'll move on.
Okay.
We spent way too much time talking about these episodes. If I'm Disney, this is kind of the beauty of having your own freaking network, right? Your own Disney Plus network. You're not obliged to sponsors or any of these other folks. So if you decide, you know what, we're going to pull an audible and we're going to release all 3 episodes, go right ahead. Yeah. Nothing is stopping them from doing so. And I guarantee you, there are probably many television series that have been out there on network television, cable television. Had they had the opportunity to do the same thing, they probably would have done for some of the same reasons we're talking about now, right? Maybe it did make sense to launch a new series all together for the 3 episodes first together, because that hooks people better than the slow burn. And by 3, how many times have you seen a network television premiere and by the 3rd episode, they were already announcing that it's been canceled? Ratings are too low. We're canceling it.
Right.
And then it's one of those where like you stick around, you're like, hey, that actually wasn't bad. By episode 9, they finally got the crap together. So it's a very fortunate position to be in when you own your own network and you own your own series and you can kind of do these kinds of things when you want to do them.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay.
But you know what? Now let's get to the good stuff here.
I was going to say devil's advocate to the devil's advocate to the devil's advocate.
No. I think we've advocated enough. All right. So who are the showrunners behind this thing, Albert?
So we know it's Tony Gilroy. We know him from Bourne Identity series. More importantly, we know him from the Rogue One. He's the one that came in and helped with the rewrites and reshoots. And he was actually given 2 opportunities. He took it on the second one there after the death of his father. And Dan Gilroy, which is his brother, is on staff as a writer. We've also got Stephen Schiff and someone named Bo Willimon. And I'm not that close to some of the writers in the industry, so I'm sure these guys they're vetted and they've done some really great stuff. I will say, again, early non-spoiler reviews and feedback has been the writing is pretty phenomenal, as much as everything else is too, which we'll come to here in a little bit. But as you know, we're Star Wars fans and you can't appease everyone.
Well, and our standard of writing tends to be a bit on the lower side. George Lucas, thank you.
Yeah. The bar is
so
low.
everything seems great compared to episode 2.
And as far as the directors, Toby Haynes, Susanna White, and Benjamin Caron are the only 3 that have been officially listed. I think they are officially listed. I don't know that there will be any other ones. The only thing I do want to mention is episode 7. I think we brought this up at some point when we were talking about Andor, but episode 7 premieres on October 19th. And it seems like it's going to be right at the end of what I'm assuming will be the second arc, right? So 1 to 3 will be one arc, 4 to 6 will be one arc. They switch directors, switch writers, and it's a 1 episode thing. And we've seen this many times before in Star Wars where that's a special episode in some way. It's a very monumental shift in terms of what's happening. Who knows what it is, and we could be wrong, but there's all the signs are there to indicate that episode 7 is definitely one to watch for, and that is going to be directed by Benjamin Caron.
Yeah. So real quickly on the directors, I don't want to linger too much here.
Mm-hmm.
Any concerns about, we've talked about some of the consistencies between directors and styles, and are they a bit more conflicting than complementary? Any concerns about having multiple people's fingers in the pots here as far as what we get visually.
No, I mean, I know we've been burned on many other series and movies when this happens, trilogies. But this seems to be a pretty tight knit group. It's very similar to what we saw with like Mando, even though the styles were you could see the different stylistic changes and preferences that some of the directors had. Robert Rodriguez in particular, with the Book of Boba Fett and his Mando episode. I mean, all that still seemed like it was all linked together. So no real concerns. I think if they had a director for every episode, then I'd be like, okay, there's too many chefs in the kitchen. Sorry, Chef Chris, don't mean to take a cheap shot at you, but too many chefs in the kitchen on that one. But with 3, no, I think it's fine. It seems like a very small, close knit group, and I wouldn't be worried about that. How about you? You good with these guys?
We'll see how it goes. I'm not familiar with them for the most part. I'd like the consistency, but again, 12 episodes in TV, this isn't uncommon. So I'm not worried about it by default. Just thought I'd get your thoughts and your feedback. Yeah. And just a quick pause. We got a lot of faces that haven't been in the live chat for a while, so it's really cool to see. Yeah, I mean, Andor brings all the boys and girls to the party. But yeah, it's good to see Jeff, Risk, Chef Chris, Miss Sunflower, Sky, Lauren, Kathy, as well as the folks we mentioned earlier. So thanks all for joining us tonight.
Yep. And you'll get your name shouted out at the very end again, because Jonesy's keeping track of everybody as we speak.
I do.
Okay, we can talk quickly. I mean, I think we all know about the actors for the most part. That's probably been some of the information that's really circulated quite a bit because of the marketing. They're all over the news right now doing interviews. But maybe why don't we mix in something, I guess, what we know about the characters as we kind of talk this. Again, non-spoiler stuff that's been released, and things that we've either some of the stuff is still speculation on my part, to be honest. So I could be wrong. Jonesy could be wrong. So there's a little bit of that. But Diego Luna as Cassian Andor, we're fine with that one. Genevieve O'Reilly coming back, reprising her role as Mon Mothma. Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen Rael. That Rael name, by the way, the last name, I mean, you can't help but think of Rael Averross.
Right, from Master and Apprentice.
I'm trying to remember, is that like one of those Star Wars names that was like an original scripts by Lucas and it ends up getting used over and over again, kind of like Rey and...
I can't remember.
Yeah. Okay, it doesn't matter.
I want to say there's something about it. Yeah, anyway.
But it's just funny that, he's got the same name there.
Right.
The one that we found out last week was Bix Kayleen, played by Adria Arjona.
So this is the person. Yeah, this is the one that we're a little unsure of. Is this someone that Cassian's related to, or is this a love interest, or is this just another, person that they sync up with that's starting to round out the team? So this is a character that's in, clearly in the marketing quite a bit, and it seems like they are, they're going to team up at some point. And again, she seems very eager to strike against the Empire as well, even though that seems a bit foolhardy at this point. So, but anyway, have you landed on a place of where you think of who you think this character is, just at a very basic template?
The only thing is, we were talking about the ABC footage, and there was a clip that they showed there, and it does sound like she has connections to Luthen, which is how Luthen and Andor connect. And so that scene that we got, the long extended clip where he's got some kind of box that he stole from the Imperials, and he's going to sell it to Stellan Skarsgård, or Luthen, the character of Luthen. Somehow it does seem like she puts him in contact with Luthen in some way. So how she has those connections, I don't know. I do get the sense that they are friends. I'm still not clear whether they're, lovers or just really good friends. They grew up together. Maybe they were both part of their families have been displaced. Maybe they both grew up as migrant children, impacted by the Empire or the war or the Clone Wars, or the battle with Separatists, etc. Something along those lines. But beyond that, that's about all I really officially know.
All right. I believe she's Puerto Rican too, so shout out to our friends over at Triad of the Force. I know they're super excited.
Another
about
one,
that.
yes, yeah. Right. Denise Gao as Deidre Miro.
So she's
I saw her listed as it just said Imperial agent is what it said. But I like your theory of being ISB. I do.
And that seems to kind of match a little bit with it.
Yep.
So yeah, again, this character is starting to get a little bit more airtime in some of the later spot trailers as we get closer to release. So again, interesting. It seems like she might be the main antagonist. So if you think in terms of like Rebels, this would have been like Agent Callus to an extent,
right?
And so it's kind of getting that vibe for me. But again, a character that seemed to be a pretty hardline Imperial. not going to take any garbage from these rebels, but she seems to be the one who's a bit more realistic about the threat that they're bringing. It is what it appears so far.
Yeah. In the chat, Miss Sunflower says, excited for the Imperials or the different branches of Imperials, and then she explicitly calls out ISB. Yes, we need more. And there's so many branches of the Empire that we just never see. We read about them. They're in the role-playing games. They show up in the cartoons and comic books, but they never get the limelight of television or movies. So this would be a cool way to introduce that stuff, especially when you're talking about having a espionage kind of, more politically influenced type show, right? I mean, this seems like the breeding ground to get people up to speed and brought into that fold.
Right.
Let's see. Where was the
Kyle Solar, who plays Cyril?
Yeah, I don't think I have a last name on him.
Again, a character we don't know a whole lot about. He seems to be part of this local security, this Corsac type of group.
Yes.
That seems to be on the side of the Empire, maybe in training, maybe cadet type of stuff, or it's just, again, these local governments that are trying to appease the Empire or represent the Empire on a more local level until the Empire really shows up with stormtroopers and everything else.
I'd like to see him as a foil to Andor personally, right? Maybe they grew up together or there's some personal history there. Even if that doesn't happen, what would also be interesting is to see is if he is part of this local militia for all the reasons that, well, not for the exact reasons, but much like Andor gets pulled into the Rebel Alliance, does his character suddenly later down the road get pulled in as joining the Empire, right? He worked his way as a mall cop or whatever he's doing here, security contractor, and went and finally joined the big boys over the Imperial Navy.
I like that.
That'd be kind of cool, right?
I like that mall cop. Where's his segue?
Yeah. They still make those though, right? Still?
I don't really know.
Who buys those these days? Okay. I guess mall cops do.
I would.
Okay, thank you.
If it was free.
Fiona Shaw. Hey, you know what? Fiona Shaw. So officially now, officially, they did mention that this is the adoptive mother of Cassian Andor.
So Andor's not his real last name. So she's Marva Andor is what what they've had in the trailers. And so, okay, well, interesting. So Andor may not be his last name.
Right. Well, that threw us off because I was like, surely they didn't make a mistake on the subtitles. That's how we first saw it. It wasn't announced anywhere. We caught it when you watched subtitles in the trailer that was released on Disney Plus Day or whatever it was.
Right.
But could it be it could be a situation, a very sweet situation where she changed her last name to Andor's last name to be part of, his family or feel like part of that family. But
maybe so.
But either way, that's a very interesting take. So I'm kind of excited about that. I don't know how much they're going to dig into that relationship, but it's very unique. It's not unique to Star Wars.
Yeah, it seems important though. I mean, because again, she's the one kind of giving Andor this speech as well of interpreting what's going on around him. Of course, he's a young man at this point still, but so is she along those same kind of rebellious, resisting the Empire? Are those her goals too, or is that her feeling as well that's also being impressed upon Cassian, or is she a bit at odds with that? It doesn't seem like it from the trailer. It seems like she's very much like this is what's happening and seems to be the right way to go because we can't sit here and take this anymore.
Yeah.
So very interesting to see what the relationship looks like.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I want to see, I hope they do spend some time on that. Maybe not out of the gate, but at some point come back and revisit that relationship. And then, of course, finally, Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera. And I suspect he won't swing around maybe to that 10:16 or 10:19 episode, that episode 7.
I thought you meant like at the 10-minute, 19-second mark of episode 4 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a guess, but...
Just a guess, yeah.
That's what I would... No, the October episode, the one we mentioned, episode 7, which could be maybe its own little standalone, but that would be a cool way. Because, I mean, he seems pretty pivotal for a lot of obvious reasons that we'll probably discuss here later.
Right.
Hey, what do you think about the composer? Like, we talked about the music in the trailer, and I think you and I both agreed that it was cool sounding, like we enjoyed it. And I think their streak continues with good music outside of the John Williams era, as much as that feels weird to even say.
Right.
It almost seems sacrilegious, but I think they're doing a really good job. But this guy, Nicholas Britell, who's done the music for Succession, which I think just won a ton of Emmys or something, whatever award ceremony just happened. And then he did the Underground Railroad, which I think was associated with Disney and Lucasfilm.
I've heard some of the music. I've heard some of the music from Underground Railroad was absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't. I heard all of the buzz about Succession, but I didn't hear anything about the music side of it. But I don't follow movies super closely. But Underground Railroad, it had been featured on a few things, so I'd seen and been exposed to a little bit more of that one. But I'm
Mhm.
excited about this. I'm happy for fresh faces to come in and continue this, this legacy that John Williams established, and to be able to, again, give us their flavor of it and see what fits these different styles of shows and movies that we'll get, from here on out.
Yep.
And so how do we leverage that history and push that forward? So I'm really excited about this. I've enjoyed, even though maybe the enjoyment of some of the music has been, a little up and down at times. It's always been very solid at the very least. And there have been some moments which have actually been very, very, very good. And so this is a series I think that we can really go in a lot of different directions, and we know we're going to get a lot of really interesting and different visuals and characters. So I'm hoping that Nicholas Britell really brings something special to the series. I've got pretty high expectations actually for the music.
Cool. Yeah, me too. And of course, shout out to the person that really kind of started this whole transition away from John Williams and Kevin Kiner and what he was doing to mix a lot of what he wanted to do, as well as bring in a lot of the old in a number of TV series. So
Yeah, and Giacchino too. I mean, with Rogue
yeah,
One was a huge,
mhm.
was a huge shift there. It's a huge pivot of leveraging, John Williams' work with his own unique style and his own unique flavor to it.
Yep. No, good point. Okay, let's get into, so that's the tail of the tape. That's kind of the stats, if you will. Let's talk, I guess, more. Let's get into some speculation and theory and all that. So, first question, you, Jonesy. So, what are you looking forward to most in this series, and what do you think this will set this series apart from any of the other Disney Plus series that we've had? And do we want that? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing?
Well, I think the first thing that of what we've had in recent times is going to be the cinematic landscapes, and I think we are going to recognize the real environments pretty quickly and in a pretty significant way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think visually that might be one of the first things that really pops out to us. That's going to be different than any of the other Disney Plus shows that we've had so far, because they've all been on a very small set, using the volume considerably most of the time, and this one seems to have used it sparingly at best, right? And if at all. And so that's going to be pretty exciting. I mean, we want to see these sweeping landscapes, get back to some of that in Star Wars. These really nice wide shots that are 100% real, for lack of a better word. And so I think that initially, I think that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to is this visual aspect of what we're going to get, and also a very different story. And I almost like that the first couple of episodes might be a little bit slower, because what that tells me is that we are going to take time and learn about the characters and where they come from, and what is going on with them. And so it's going to really set the stage later on, and that's when you really can pay dividends with with these heavier moments and these more impactful moments later on. That's what delivers those moments, is putting in the work up front.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually interested. I'm pretty excited and happy to hear that we're going to take that time to do that. So those are a couple of the first things right off the top of my head. What about you?
Well, I think this particular series it's very reminiscent of Rogue One. Like, when you think about Rogue One,
A little bit
it
of
did
unknown
break
and all
away
this.
in a lot of different ways. It
Yeah,
gave us a different side to Star Wars telling. It gave us different different points of views, different aspects. It was a different lens that we were looking through at times with the characters, both on the Imperial side and the Rebel side. Derpy Gaming's in the chat said it's going to be different than anything we've seen of Star Wars because of the point of view. So, kind of hitting on what I'm about to talk about here.
absolutely.
So I think from that perspective, we're going to get a whole different side of Star Wars, or maybe an extension of that different side of Star Wars that we got in Rogue One. I think when we watch Rogue One, and even when we talk about it to this day, that first scene where we're introduced to Andor, and he kills his buddy because he's got to get away, and that's that dirty, darker side of the rebellion. It's a dirty, darker side of war. And that picks at a very mature theme in a lot of ways, more mature than what I think we're used to in Star Wars. And I think that's why it was so shocking, and it set us on our heels a little bit when we first saw it. But it kind of gave us a taste of like, we need to want to see more of that, right? And I can't help but so far from the reviews and everything we've talked about, the previews, it just feels like we're going to get that. So that alone sets it apart from pretty much anything that we've had in Star Wars. I mean, maybe in the comics, do we dip our toes in some of this thematically a little bit from time to time, right? But to see it visually on screen, it's a different ball game.
Right.
I like
And
your point about the sets too. I think this is going to be it's going to be a first for the TV series that we've had for Star Wars television, but traditional kind of big sets and on location sets that we've seen in Star Wars. I think the use of the volume is still there. I mean, there's some of those scenes I just can't unless they're doing like matte paint or something, right? Going old school traditional
yeah,
effects.
I agree.
That's got to be
Still got to
they
be
can't make
there.
every one of these sets. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I think the volume is going to be used sparsely, and there's not going to be a lot of it. But we've
Exactly.
talked about this enough. There are some times when we can definitely tell that the volume is being used. I think now we know there are times that we can't, and that's a good thing. But there are times when we see these long, expansive, really deep type shots that you cannot mistake them for anything more than just on location. I think that's going to bring a whole new level to the expansiveness of Star Wars and what we come to expect. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to feel familiar.
And to go back to what you said about the characters, we're really going to be steeped in the characters. So we're going to get their point of view because we are going to presumably, I think, live it with them during certain stages of maybe not only Cassian Andor's life, but even maybe, Bix Colleen
Mhm.
and others and different stages of what Mon Mothma's going through and how what her influences look like too. So I think, and then, with Luthen. So there's a lot of different perspectives that we're going to get, but I'm really excited that we are going to get this coming of age as well, but a very different coming of age story than we've had in Star Wars in general, where if you look at Luke Skywalker still had a very safe childhood, very, very safe and secure. Didn't have this uncertainty despite being thrust into it almost an adult or as a late teenager, where Andor is going to be thrust into it right from a very,
Very
very young
beginning.
age. Yeah,
Yeah.
with no one around him, so you don't even have adoptive parents, for a time most likely.
There's a part too. There's a bit of me that I'm looking forward to the mature themes, and I don't want to turn this into that episode.
Yeah, sure.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Mike and I had this whole discussion about whether certain things would be introduced into Star Wars, and I think at the time, I think we just agree to disagree. There's a part of me that is interested in seeing them explore more mature themes, and I'm not talking about like over the top violence and blood and gore, right? That just doesn't feel like Star Wars, although I think with like Mando and some of these other series, I think we've gotten closer to that, right? We're kind of towing the line of what is Star Wars, but still staying, still being progressive, but still staying faithful to the original vision. Yeah. I still think that's going to happen. But I do like them pushing the envelope just a little bit and giving us more mature Star Wars because, as we've said time and time again on the show, to beat a dead horse again, resurrect the horse, and then beat it all over again. I think Star Wars is just too big. There's too many people out there that love this, and when you have that big of a group, you have the core, what we love about Star Wars, but then you get other stuff that's out there. There's other stories that can be told, specifically like um, the oppression stuff, the government stuff. They touch on these in these main movies, these main books and television shows, but really digging into that and giving us different layers and additional multiple layers of that stuff, I think is really good. And both sides too, not just the alliance, the Rebel Alliance, but also on the Imperial side. Some might find that boring, though. I think some people would think if they're not out there every episode flying TIE fighters, shooting down X-Wings, pulling out lightsabers,
Right.
mentioning the Force every 2 minutes, then it's not Star Wars. And while I would agree that used to be what Star Wars was, and it is still Star Wars, it's just so much bigger than that now, right? And
Yeah.
so that brings a level of excitement, I think, to me too.
Yeah, and when we get to you've got a couple questions in here earlier or later on about what does success and what does failure kind of look like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to come back and revisit some of what you just said because I think you're absolutely right. I think you're kind of flirting into that range right now of what makes this thing really work and what might make it fall apart. And so I think I'm going to reserve comment until we get to those questions here in just a few minutes.
Yeah. I do. So on this more adult theme stuff,
Mm-hmm.
um, it does seem like we're going to get some kind of well, how would I say this? There's not a sex scene, okay, so nobody freak out,
Right, but
but
there's
it's
definitely
discussed,
yes.
it's talked about, And I don't want anybody to get excited or disappointed or upset because this has been in a lot of Star Wars. It's just never been probably as explicit as this. And by explicit, I mean them
All right,
actually.
You're just
Yeah,
digging the hole now.
yeah,
You've really
I'm
got
picking the wrong words here.
people are
But no,
totally confused
explicit.
about what you're trying to say. But
It's
it is
explicit in that they're discussing it and they're talking about it without giving graphic details about it. You know what I mean? We
right.
know it happens. Maybe they imply that it happened on screen or off screen, I should say. They implied that it happened off screen. But if you think about it, we've had a number of books already in Star Wars that this has come up in. This is what I'm talking about with the adult themes. Like this is where, okay, now is this really a kid show? Well, Tony Gilroy kicked this whole thing off about 3 weeks ago on the press tour and said, this is not a kid show. He made
Right.
this for adults. So guess what? We're going to get adult stuff like that. And people just need to calm down and not get freaked out by it.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. And it's actually right at the very, I think it's at the very beginning. So everyone will know exactly what we're talking about, I think, within a few minutes of the first episode, if I recall.
Oh, okay. So you know more than I do.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, we just talked about Rael Alvarez.
Yeah, I mean, Rail, yeah, I mean, he was a bit of a
slut.
Well, I mean, yeah, and you look at Elzar Man. I mean, High
Yep.
Republic has definitely dipped into it on the written page, and so
Markion Rowe,
yeah.
Padme
Def-
and Anakin,
Well,
Han and
there's-
Leia.
Yep. Well, now you're getting a little stretch because those were all way off screen.
I'm just saying it happens in Star Wars. And
I don't believe you. Everyone's pure.
everybody's been immaculate concepted like Anakin.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Okay. So yeah, so it's going to be a bit
conceived.
more mature. I think this is the Star Wars that people have been wanting in some way.
Sorry, Jeff.
Oh, Jeff with the puns.
Jeff, what? Show Rail some respect. Sorry.
No.
I shouldn't have used that word for Rail. He was, I mean, I don't know what other word you would use. He was just kind of a happy-go-lucky Jedi. So
Sunflower saying Star Wars has got game now. That's right.
yeah, it does.
And then Lauren's got my back.
Oh,
Albert forgot about Maz.
yes. Okay. Before this, we'll keep this kid friendly because I got some stuff I could say there about.
That's true. G is quite flirtatious.
Well, there's a lot more than that.
That's right.
Okay.
right,
Any
so-
other adult themes though?
No, I
No,
mean, I
we-
think we know we're going to get the seedier side of the rebellion. You know, we're going to have a lot of questionable, both morally and ethically, you know, whether or not this is the right thing to do, what's right and wrong, and the debate possibly about what is right and wrong. You know, what is terrorism? I mean, some of these themes that you and I have talked about for a long time, you know, are not necessarily, you know, shooting, you know, blasters on a battlefield. It's conceptual about it all. It's methodologies, it's ways of thinking, it's ideology. You know, it's your philosophy about how all of this, you know, how you should behave and how you should resist in the face of oppression and whether or not you view it as oppression. I mean, so it's going to be this very gray area, I think, even though it'll still, I think, I have an idea. I believe it'll still be presented a bit through a black and white lens, but we're going to see the gray area expanding of this idea of right and wrong. And we're going to see a lot of variations of it. So I'm really excited to see how well that works because I think that could be really interesting. And again, those are things that are difficult. Those are mature. Those are adult themes because it's difficult for young people to really understand that, children in particular, because we raise our kids for the most part to understand right and wrong, right? And not that there are decisions that go into what makes a decision right or wrong. And did I mean wrong when I did something, right? That type of thing. But anyway, without going too off the deep end about it all, I think those are going to be some of the adult themes. I think those are the ones I'm most looking forward to, though, is what does this gray area look like and how do they tackle it and how do they actually present it to see if they give us something definitive of what Tony Gilroy, believes these characters, where they actually sit on things.
So there's been a long running gag. I mean, ever since the original trilogy came out about how the Empire didn't do anything. The Rebel Alliances were just terrorists, and it's funny
blowing
to
up a
joke
planet
about.
was totally justified. It was fine.
Right, yeah, and it's all fun and games, right? I know we joke about that,
Yeah,
but
sure.
In my heart of hearts, I don't believe that the Rebel Alliance is a terrorist cell. There are people that do some pretty extreme things. There are always going to be some knuckleheads that we've seen that have done some things that are questionable, that sort of thing. But if they introduce the partisans, as they've introduced the partisans in some of the novels, I think you will truly finally see what a terrorist is. And that, I mean, to mix, and we're so familiar with terrorism now ever since 9/11, right? It's so just kind of weaved into our everyday fabric and culture and what we do to prepare and safeguard against terrorism that this is something that I feel like it's not really been explored much in Star Wars. And it would be kind of a really easy way to hook a lot of people to kind of, give us the terrorist side of things from in this, galaxy far, far away. I know you were touching on that, but all I wanted to say is I think that's a part. And with Saul Guerrera, I would hope we get to see that. I hope we get to see that some of the stuff that he does is it's just not right. It's not black or white. And then getting to the more complex type of relationships with like the Rails and the Mon Mothmas and them knowing that he's doing these things and them still going, you know what, but it's helping. And so really not being punitive, all right, with regards to Saul, not going after him and even funding him and supporting him. Because like we said, I think a couple episodes, sometimes in this kind of a war with this kind of an enemy, that stuff has to happen. Maybe innocent lives do. And this is not me preaching. I don't feel this way, but I can see from their perspective, like Andor, sometimes you got to kill innocent people because there's a bigger war that needs to be won. And that's where Saul really shines. So be kind of cool if they did touch into that later down in the series.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of that arena here in just a few minutes.
Okay, well I'm done talking about that.
Okay. So our next question then. So will there be any flashbacks? We've had flashbacks in a couple of different ways with Star Wars. Some are like more Force visions, some are actual flashbacks, some are montages. Are we going to get the flashbacks with Andor, or are we actually going to see him progress in a more linear fashion or some combination?
Yeah, well, so
yes.
Yes. Next question.
Right.
Well, let me give you the full context and history of this question.
Well, and I'll only got half an hour left. So
do it in 10 seconds or less. No, so this is a question that Mike and I came up with a while back because we were going back and forth about flashbacks just in general. Like, is that Star Wars? And this is when they first started doing flashbacks, whenever that was. And I think he was arguing that it's not, Star Wars doesn't do flashbacks because that was what Lucas didn't do, right? He just told the story as it is. And if they needed to talk about something that happened in the past, they just talked about it. They didn't cut to anything to show you. And I think for some of the George, what I'm going to call the George Lucas purists, flashbacks shouldn't be in Star Wars. Well, you know what? Every freaking series we've had now at some point, including the movies, does flashbacks. And that, I think that's where now that I say that, it originally started in the Last Jedi is when I think we first brought that up. So this question may not be relevant anymore. I think flashbacks are just part of the fabric of Star Wars and Star Wars storytelling. So the short answer is yes, I think they will. What I don't know is if we're going to get like some kind of a dream sequence. Are they just doing hard cuts? All that stuff's very interesting because I think it changes the pace of the episodes themselves. So I'm kind of curious as to what we are going to get. Would you be opposed if they didn't do flashbacks? How would you feel if they just started at Cassian Andor at age 6 and just told the story from there, and then they do a time jump, and we get him in his teens or whatever it is where the main story starts to evolve?
Yeah, honestly, I kind of expect that to be the case. Now, what I do think that they will do is I think they'll establish kind of that origin and that beginning, and then we'll jump, and then we might revisit it from time to time, a bit like we did with the Mandalorian with Din Djarin. I mean, clearly it was this more traumatic type of event, but I think you can do both. I think you can establish all of that really early on and lead into the show, because I think that's a natural place to start. And when I think about would I want to just start where he's at today? No, I don't think I really need to. We kind of know a bit who Cassian Andor is as an adult, even if he's not all the way to where he ends up in Rogue One. We have an idea who he is. The part that we have zero idea about is this really young, impressionable age of 6 years old till, basically a middle teenager. And so I think that's an area that I'd like to start off with and really establish the groundwork of the Empire, establish where he comes from, establish what they have taken from him at an early age, rather than making us kind of wait for it and go on, because we know all this happened to him at such a young age. There's no better place to start, in my opinion. And then we can go back and revisit a few things here and there whenever it makes sense to. So I'm okay with this being a blended of approach of this linear and then, a more of a flashback oriented, but we can use that more sparingly, after we get past the first few episodes, I would think.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge what's going on in the chat. They're talking about Rebel Rising, and I chimed in. Go read that book. If you've not read Rebel Rising, it's phenomenal. It's good stuff. And it hits exactly what I was talking about. You get to see some of the terrorist acts that the partisans in Saul carry out and
And the
just how shocking that is.
differentiation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and their indoctrination process or their, as being terrorists, which is kind of weird, crazy, and kind of cool. Okay, so I think it's enough on the flashbacks. Either way, I think I'm for them. But to your point though, at the very end there, where I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. How much of that are we going to get? How substantial is that piece of it, or is it going to be more focused? Because from what we see from what we see in so far in the first couple of episodes that have been teased and the footage and all that, it doesn't look like we spent a lot of time with him as a kid.
Right.
Or they're keeping that pretty hush hush and quiet, and we're just not seeing it.
Sure.
So I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to spend a whole episode with Andor, as a young child or even as a 10-year-old or something like that.
Yeah.
I think we'll progress through it, but I think there's enough there to understand and again, give it time to breathe, give it time to actually see what the impact was to him rather than it just be a one-off event. They just go and crater the planet and they have to go and bail. There's a lot of story there. Let's not linger too long on it, but let's make sure we take the time and do it right. Give his comment weight,
Exactly.
So allow it that time to really build it. It is an important milestone for him that it was so at such a young age, he actually still remembers why he's in all of this in the first place.
Yes. Yep. Okay, Jonesy, complete this sentence. The Andor series will be successful if
it gets the seedier side of Star Wars right. If we get these mature adult themes right. And I think that means, do we get this balance? All the things we've been talking about, the Rebel Rising aspect of things, the saga raras, all of these things have to somehow come and fit together to where we say, okay, this is dirty, gritty Star Wars, or a really dirty, gritty environment that these folks are in, and it works. It's not something that just is self-defeating in a lot of different ways. It doesn't linger, it doesn't drag, it doesn't belabor the point. But at the same time, you actually feel like they are at odds. It's David versus Goliath. But there's still these little aspects of hope. These people have promise, and there's things, and they're just, you want to see them finally start to understand what it takes to form what we'll know will be so successful later on. I think that's the part they got to get right, though, is like, where does that come from, and what are they willing to do? It has to deliver on all of those really key components of what makes up the rebellion and what shapes what they believe and how they behave in all the different aspects, including the Saws of the world versus the other extreme of the Mon Mothmas of the world. So that's really all got to kind of work there. So what about you? What looks like success for you in the series?
I mean, I think it is that. To me, that feels like it's non-negotiable. Like that just has to happen.
That's just table stakes, yeah.
Right, because it's this is what the show's been sold as. You've got Tony Gilroy behind it. We're going into this coming off the high or the flavor of Rebel Rising in some ways, as well as Rogue One. They have to get that right. I think they have to do that. I think from that perspective alone, I think if they just give us that, even if the show is, and we'd have no reason to believe this, but if the show was terrible in terms of writing and directing and the actors were terrible and all that, to me, it's like the West End Games books from the 80s, right?
Oh boy, it's been a while since you brought those up.
I had to pull them in somehow, right? But there's so much material there, right? And even though that's now legends and things, but if we got to see that for people like me, that's like mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned. Just to understand what that looks like and how it all kind of works and operates. I mean, there's like the realistic weight around success is so subjective. And when you got a company like Disney, we're in a day and age now where Hulu's and the Netflixes and Disney Pluses and stuff, I mean, they're not obliged to release numbers. You've got Nielsen out there trying to capture some of this data, but at the end of the day, sometimes the only way to really measure success is do they do a second series, and they've already signed on for a second series. So, I mean, that's really not how we would kind of gauge that as well. Um, going back to the fandom base, already there are people on both sides of the fence. And some of the people on the other side of the fence, like the fandom menace folks, some of those folks actually got screeners, and that's good. I think good on Disney for allowing them to preview this, although all they've done is just trash it already, and for all really kind of petty reasons, in my opinion. But um, so I think you're gonna get a lot of discourse around, was it successful? Did it do this right? Did it do that right? People are going to measure success through their lens. They'll measure it as best as it serves them for their purposes. So it's a really loaded question, and it's not fair to ask you, but I thought I'd ask you anyways. No, but no, seriously, I think it's hard to tell. Like I don't even know what the answer is. It's all subjective. It really depends on what you're looking for and what you want. I will say though that these first 3 episodes, at least the feedback from everybody that's seen them, is that, again, not on the other side of the fence, has been going on about how great the acting is and how great the writing is, and the pacing is a slow burn. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's going to be a different thing for Star Wars. So
Actually, it'd be more like original Star Wars of all things.
yeah, more like New Hope at times.
I think
So, yeah.
another thing that is really important that they really need to deliver on, and I know this is something that's really important to you and some of our friends kind of in this podcast space, is delivering on the promise of who the characters are and what they represent and where they come from. Right. And being able to truly tell the story of a migrant and to tell the story of what it means to lose everything and what it means to, find who you are. A lot of those key human elements is what makes any show. It could take any show that's meh and make it good. It can make anything that's good and make it completely great. It can also completely rip the bottom out from under you if you never connect with them.
Yeah.
And so we've already got a connection to some of these characters, right? Because we've been with them for so many years. But we have to deliver this new aspect of the story as it gets told and make sure that it resonates with what they've premised and what they've put out there. So the writing and the acting are huge parts of that. But I know that's going to be something for a lot of people who have really put, especially representation and seeing, people that they can associate with on screen. This is going to be really important for them to really deliver on, because it's going to have that really harsh critique lens if that falls short in any kind of way.
Yeah. We've got people like my mom and dad who have already, I mean, the fact that he did Rogue One and now he's got his own television series. I mean, they've already kind of checked that box, right? And as far as like they're concerned, they've already won. There's somebody now on screen that looks like, them. And that was kind of my perspective. I've already kind of talked about this on the show, but that representation that I did not have, that is so vital and it's so important. And it took me a number of years to realize that. And I get it now. I didn't in my youth. But as you get older, I think, or at least for me personally, it does make a difference. And having somebody like Diego Luna up there is a big part of it. Now, the icing on the cake is what you said. If they tell the story of what migrants are going through and what it means to be displaced by, war, kind of like the Mara's sisters that we got from the Clone Wars series, right? And the impacts, the downstream impacts of what war does on the everyday citizens, not just the well-to-be rich folk or the mediocre income families and stuff, but all the way down, right, to the, no pun intended, to the lower levels of like Coruscant. Seeing that downstream impact and seeing what it does and how it displaces families and relationships and all that, I think that's going to be pretty pivotal. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people. So I think it's a great way to kind of measure the success. It's just, there's a lot of things here that are just not substantial, right? In terms of how you measure it. There's nothing we can actually material that we can grab and say, yep, that was good or whatever.
Right. So that kind of leads into the next one of like the Andor series will not be a success if. I think that one could go both ways. Is there something else though beyond that could really crater the show or hamper it enough to where it could really spell some problems for it?
Well, I think this one's tough because we have the foresight and knowledge now of the reception and the feedback from the first episodes, but we still have 9 more episodes to go. The bottom could fall out from underneath it for all we know, right? But I think if people lose interest in the characters themselves, first and foremost, to me, it always goes back to the characters. I think if you ask any writer, that's really what it goes back to in a lot of ways. I wonder how much people aren't going to enjoy the fact that they're probably not going to have lightsabers. They're not going to enjoy, or how much they may not enjoy or see it as unsuccessful because there aren't Jedi, or there's no mention of the Force,
Right.
or from what I've seen also, and I saw this with Rogue One when it came out, but Star Wars is too generic looking, meaning these are characters that could exist in any universe, and the themes and the struggles that they're dealing with are just so generic, and so they're non-unique to Star Wars explicitly. And so where's the Star Wars factor? You know what I mean? Outside of the aesthetic and seeing, oh, there's a Star Wars ship and all that. You've heard this argument before. We could just take that story, you could stick it in any one of these universes because there's nothing specific about it. But the reality is, not to use that word, or to use that word, as Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna said in that interview they did last week, they are trying to do that. That is exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to tell you these real world stories, real world characters, real world scenarios, real world outcomes in Star Wars. And so it may not always look like Star Wars, but it is because those characters are living and breathing in that universe. So I think that can go both ways. I think it can cut both ways depending on the viewership and what people are going in looking for.
Exactly. I think that's a great point. I mean, that's the thing. These are situations that happen every day. And you know what? Aside from blasters and, some of the fantasy based approach of Star Wars in particular, some of this might look and feel like reality for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And it might have a level of that truth, that they've experienced. And is it going to be a bit, I can't think of a better word, but like sensationalized or exaggerated? Most likely because it's TV and it has to be entertaining and it has to be a bit grandiose because it is Star Wars, right? They're going to be big explosions and firefights and things like that are a bit more dramatic.
Yeah.
But I think at its fundamental level, though, I think that's the idea of the show. It wouldn't do this if that wasn't what they were trying to do and present that story about what people go through in these types of situations where they, you and I haven't, thankfully, have had to live this kind of life before. And I don't know that Tony Gilroy or some of the writers have either, but there are a lot of people that do. And so I'm really excited to see how that resonates with folks who may have been in those positions and look back on their own lives and say, well, I may not have had all the war part, but man, all these other, the displacement and everything else that goes with it, man, those were real. That was, those were real things.
Yep.
Now, the one thing I think I'll kind of change gears about what I think could weigh the show down if they don't get it right is going to be the politics side of it. And we've talked a little bit about this, and I know some of the folks in the chat tonight believe, that the political side of things might be interesting, and that might be, the Mon Mothma Avenue and what she's doing might be really exciting. And that word, maybe exciting is the wrong word, but it might be really interesting. And again, seeing the contrast between how Saw Gerrera does things and how Andor does things, and then how Luthen works into all of that stuff too. That part has to be done with care so it doesn't weigh it down and drag the show down and, for lack of a better word, a bit more crass about it, make it boring, right? It has to still have that engagement to it. And when you're in these really uppity environments and you're rubbing shoulders with the rich and wealthy and you see all these spoiled behaviors, even though we have the best of intentions, with some of these characters, and the characters might be good for what we're doing, if it's not hitting the right notes, if it's not moving the story along at the right pace, that could spell trouble for the series going forward. And again, maybe not so much early on as we establish things, but we don't want those scenes where we're going to go back to the Senate now. All right, well, they're going to go talk some more. Mon Mothma's not going to be productive. Okay. And we keep telling that same story over and over. There's got to be something to push all that forward. And again, make it a little more exciting and sensationalize it a bit, of course, but make it to where it seems like it is popular and show us that conflict with Saw Gerrera. How do we make these characters connect? Even if they're not directly connected, I think it's going to be pivotal for the political side not to get boring.
I'm with you like that, and I've said this in the show many times. I'm not the biggest fan of the politics in Star Wars. I get it. I acknowledge it. It is part of the DNA, and it's there. And for the most part, I think I've always enjoyed it. But sometimes it can feel a little heavy-handed. I always go back to Plagueis because that not necessarily the not so much the political part in Plagueis, but the financial, like the most. And I work in the financial industry, which is the most ironic thing in the world, but is the least interesting aspect of Star Wars to me, and it just felt super heavy handed. Like
Right.
I'm fine with them getting into like I kind of want to know what the infrastructure of the politics look like. What's the relationship between the Senate as it exists during this time frame now? Are they just what do you call it, a figurehead, no
Right.
power whatsoever, or they feel like they have power, but they really don't. I think that's intriguing. I'd like to
Mhm.
see that because we know that that's probably the case. Now that said, if I've got to watch an episode where they're trying to push a bill through the Senate and they're going into, you know,
Right.
forget it, I'm out. I don't really need to know all unless they do a montage. Now, if they did a montage of all that and they just kind of cut to sequences with some heavy 80s rock music, I'd be down. Otherwise, no, I don't want to know how a bill to become a bill in Star Wars. So your point's well made.
Yep.
Okay. Now
All
that
right.
I've got that off my chest.
All right. Yeah. Let's just
Does this
move
guy know how to
move
party
along
or
here.
what?
All right. So let's get to the fun stuff.
The fun stuff.
So
Last
what
two
kind of
questions.
what kind of cameos might we see? Minor appearances. Anything that's a bit of a call out or a little fun gag. What kind of things might we see?
Well, I don't know that this show lends itself to cameos. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think they might be there. I would hope they are because that does feel kind of like again part of the not to use the word again, but it does feel like the DNA of Star Wars television.
So
And
who are a
it's,
couple that might surface then? Do you think that would make sense?
I mean, could it be like Jar Jar? Is it like do we see him in the Senate, or does he have a line at some point that Mon Mothma just walks up to him, or I don't know where he's at. I mean, we know from he had that sad story in what was it? Freaking this Chuck Wendig novels. Drawing a blank on them.
Oh, the
Aftermath
aftermath.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we know his fate there, but arguably he's still in power, and it's his fault this all started anyways. But could we see somebody like him? I think cameos like that, people that we saw from like Papa Moida or whatever his name was, George Lucas reprising his role. No, that's not one. The Syndulas, would be interesting to see. Clone Wars folks, anybody from the Clone Wars series that's still kind of around.
One of the interesting things is some of the interviews that have been going around with Tony Gilroy, they talked a little bit about cameos, and he said, yeah, they're there, but he also wanted to make sure that they had some level of meaning to why they weren't just being thrown in order to make a point. Like it made sense why we would see them or why they were mentioned, I guess, if that was he wasn't real specific about how this might work. But they seem to have meaning. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to come in and have some pivotal moment, but I think it just means that when you see them, it makes sense that they would be in whatever position they are. And so I think, a Bail Organa, if we want to even call it a cameo at this point, would make a ton of sense, right? Even someone like a Palpatine or a Vader still makes sense on the grand scale of the Empire, right? And the Senate and things like that. So, I mean, those are other opportunities. Are they a little bit too heavy handed in that way? Potentially, but could they be very much in the background to where their presence is felt as well as seen, even if it's just on a hollow projector, showing something happening in the galaxy? I think that would be kind of cool to have that different perspective of what does that look like from from these groups like what Andor and his people, and they see this person, like how do they react to that? What do they think about that? That type of thing. I mean, those things are interesting to kind of get an idea of how they view the Empire and just how afraid are they of the Empire in some regard.
Yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't say, I don't know for sure. I
Lauren,
don't want.
hold on, I got to stop Lauren. Lauren, we're not going to see Hayden Christensen. No.
Yeah, no, we're not seeing it.
It would be
Although-
Darth Vader, if any, and that's a long shot, first of all. But
Well, and that's where I was going to go. Like, I don't even know that I want to see Vader in the series. As horrible as that may sound, I don't think I want him in the series. And this is kind of the same way I felt about Luke. Not to dig that up. If you go back and listen to the Mandalorian episodes, I kept saying I don't want to see Luke in the series, and then he showed up.
And you loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I'd love the minute. I still don't know that I agree with the decision, but I'm not Dave Filoni. Okay, but that's another story. That's another debate, another discussion. But Vader and Palpatine, like Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like we know they're there. We know the power that they have. We know the fear that they instill. We know that, what they're capable of doing without doing anything, by looking and just their presence and all that. So I don't know that we need them in this series. And I don't know, it feels like it does pull away from if it pulls away from what the intent is here if we start bringing in the big players like that.
Well, and again, I don't
That's
necessarily
just me
want
personally, but
right, and I'm with you there. I don't want to see them in the frame, like in person, showing their presence, but something going on in the background. Like that's why I kind of said like a hollow recording or something like that.
mhm.
And you see it from a distance, so you feel it without necessarily having to engage with that character. It's very third person. It's very observational. I think would be a really, I think it would be a little bit of a different way of doing it than what we've had in the past, where we have to see the character. But I guess so. Maybe other. So who are the other characters we might see a cameo? If we're to be more specific, I guess about some of these, would we see like a director Krennic at this stage?
I think it's probably he would be on my short list of possible people. Um, Maybe season 2 though. Like I really want them season 2 to kind of be that bridge between it's the prequel to the prequel, right? It's the
Right.
prequel to Rogue One. And that would be a way to introduce them. And same thing with like Galen Urso. I think I've talked about that theory that
Yeah, we'd like
season
that
2
to
is
be
really all
season
about
two.
Andor trying to chase down Galen Urso and how elusive he is. And so that really brings weight to that moment when he realizes like, holy crap, your dad's Galen Urso, and he's finally got his shot, literally has a shot at finally taking him out.
Hmm.
I think that would be kind of cool. But yeah, season 2 for sure on that one.
Yeah.
Same thing with like K2SO. I know people are kind of saying, oh, maybe he'll be a cameo in this one. I
Would
would
you be
like to
able
see
to?
him.
Would you be able to tell them apart? Because that
Right.
model of droid is all over the place.
Yeah, if they did, I was thinking about that. Like that droid is being used everywhere, right?
Hmm.
But if they did something to give him just a bit
A
more
dialogue,
personality
well, or
than the rest,
dialogue, and you just read the closed caption.
yeah,
They just gave
yeah,
you a number.
exactly. Or if they made him like use the line, "It's high, it's very high," or something, something like that. Just like kind of a little nudge, nudge, wink, wink to, hey, this is the one that's going to be him. I don't know how we get there. That seems too in your face and on the nose, but
Or what if something like Andor is already working on some sort of droid type of modification, like personality modification that would later be used in K2SO that gives him that person or unlocks those parts of his matrices or something like
yeah,
that.
like that. I like that idea. Like that, they have there's a K2S
Kind of a
negative
paying it
one or
forward.
whatever.
Yeah, kind of a paying it forward type of thing. You're
Hmm.
lay the groundwork there. That's probably a bit heavy handed too, but you could probably get
In
away
the
with that
chat,
one.
people are saying Tarkin, Palpatine, um, Orson, Pago the Lesser.
What? Well, all right, I don't want to get bogged down. I think Pago the Lesser has already been addressed. I don't think he's around anymore. I'm trying to remember what
Um,
happened to that character.
I'm trying to think, where was that at?
I don't want to get bogged down because we'll sit
Okay.
here and try to research it on the fly.
I'm trying to think who else would potentially be in the series. What was Ahsoka's little boyfriend there in the Clone Wars?
Oh,
I
I
should have
don't know.
researched or refreshed my memory on this one. Somebody probably has it here.
Yeah.
But
So what? So what if we saw like a Bad Batch character or something? Again, it would have to be very background ish, but because we're not going to see them on Coruscant or something like that. But what if we saw that a bit of a crossover with Bad Batch or to bring them into live action? How would you feel about that? Or is that just a little too much given they are pretty recognizable?
yeah, as much as I like, as much
Because
as
this
my
would
heart
be
says yes.
because this would be potentially years beyond where we're at with Bad Batch right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, heart says yes, mine says no.
Okay.
I don't know. I almost feel like I hate to sound that way because yeah, and I'm not taking anything away from Boba and Mando. Like
They're
that just
distracting though. They can be
well,
distracting.
they can be distracting, but I think that's part of the fun of those series too. Like if
Mhm.
we anticipate it, we look for it in those shows, and there's something about it now that we go out and try to find them, and that does feel like it would pull away. It feels like a distraction with the series because of the theme and just how more mature and adult they're trying to be. Now, I'm not saying they can't have them. I think they need to be there, but it's like you've been saying, they have to be pretty subtle. They can't be, oh, guess who's here kind of thing. It's got to be in the background, or it's got to be maybe like an iconic ship of some sort, or a weapon, or the name of just dropping the name of somebody without necessarily showing them or, you know, on screen. I think that's probably enough for us to go, oh, cool. They made a reference to it without, you know, being so in your face about it. So
Yeah. Can we put Stephanie in timeout for this Yaddle comment?
she's just naming names now. Yaddle's not going to be in the series. But look, Chef Chris has got to go and give us the go-talls. So yeah, we need to. I'll keep track of those in the series.
That's right. Okay.
They only show up in Bad Batch.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So you've coined this. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to share yours first. What is your Razor Crest prediction, and maybe refamiliarize people with what you consider your Razor Crest moments of a series or of an episode?
So the Razor Crest moment, the Razor Crest prediction goes back to the one time ever in this series, this show, that I predicted something that happened. And that was the Razor Crest blowing up in season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Okay, well, so it's not that there's some epic moment, it's that you actually got something right.
Right.
You didn't expect to get right.
Yes,
okay.
That's exactly it. Yeah. No, it's about predicting something that's probably unpredictable, something that we didn't not thinking about that could be a game changer kind of thing. So this one was difficult because I don't have a lot to go off to be.
Well, we kind of know where a lot of these characters end up too,
sure,
right?
Sure. But I think one of the things that when I started thinking about, okay, so what makes a good espionage spy kind of series? And I think all the elements so far from what we've seen through interviews and the footage and clips and everything seems to all be there. The one thing that I have not seen is the double cross. And so, or even just the double cross, right? It doesn't have to be the double cross. That would be kind of cool. But even the double cross. So, and there's still probably going to be a lot of characters that we're not aware of yet. But the idea here would be that somebody that we've been led to believe is really a good person and we've come to really trust them is going to betray Andor in a very, very big way, personal way that's going to jade him, going to give him more of an edge, right? A little bit later. But again, it's just something that was so unpredictable. And right now, the only character that even comes to mind would be somebody like Bix. But I don't know enough about her character to say that that's going to be, have enough weight.
Right.
But could it be somebody like Luthen? And then from there, I started working back. Like, okay, so now you've got a character of Luthen. So he's going to double cross the rebellion. Does that mean he is now supporting the Empire? And I thought, well, it doesn't have to be. He could be working. Maybe he's a separatist loyalist in some way, and he wants things to go back to the way they were, or somebody wronged him in that regard, or here come the tinfoil hats. Good thing you brought yours tonight, because this is getting really kind of weird. But somebody like Luthen, who goes out of his way to set up Cassian Andor, builds that trust. You can see how reluctant Cassian Andor is to befriend him, right? And then what if that did happen? What if that did happen, last episode or towards the very end, where he is double crossed and for whatever reason? And again, it doesn't have to be for the Empire; it could be for another group, but something that really, really sets him back a little bit and kind of kills his momentum of being this, budging or blooming Rebel Alliance member.
Wow, that was all deep, man. Mine's much more simple. I came up with a couple, and they were and neither one of them are like surprising in any kind of way.
Okay.
So one, I think Luthen's going to die season 1. I think that's almost a given. I don't think he survives to season 2. So Luthen's dead. And then I also think that we're going to see Saw Gerrera get his leg blown off. So I'm going to give you the literal Razor Crest moment with Saw Gerrera's leg and torso and all of that good stuff.
So he's going to be standing there, and they're going to fire it from outside of orbit, low orbit shot, just like the Razor Crest, and it just blows his leg up.
Just his leg.
I'm cool. That's actually really cool, Jonesy. I'm glad you came up with that.
I mean, no, maybe not an orbital bombardment, but something. So, but yeah, we will definitely see him get his leg blown off. And I don't think Luthen makes it out of season 1.
Do you get anybody else on your Death Watch list so far? I know it's kind of early, but.
Yeah, it's kind of early. I mean, the ones, gosh, man, I mean, there's actually, no, I think of all the characters we have, maybe Andor's adoptive mother. I think that the parents always, the parents are always a risk to go, because again, you need someone else that just forces that character that extra step that they're not willing to take, or maybe it drives them in the wrong direction for a while and they have to go and redeem themselves. Of course, is, a lot very Star Warsy type of motif. So maybe her, I don't think Bix is gonna die. That seems
Too obvious?
yeah, too well. And what purpose would it serve if they don't know each other very well? I think at least in season 1, and I think again I kind of go back to Luthen because I think that's the one that Andor's probably going to develop a friendship of sorts with. Maybe friendship is a little bit strong of a word, but I think they'll have this working relationship, and maybe it will be a bit of a betrayal, and then he dies, but he really didn't betray him. He was trying to do something else, right? To your point of a double cross, and you know that kind of idea starts working into the show. But I think that again, if they have enough of a relationship, or there was something he was trying to do and then died, again, that could be another monumental moment for Andor's character in particular to take that next leap forward, and also definitely could set Saw and company off in a totally different direction as well.
Yeah,
you know. And I think the other thing, and again, not necessarily surprise type moment, is it would be interesting to see how brutal they allow the partisans to be on screen, and will we see them really do some quite highly questionable things that make you leave the episode and be like, huh, I don't know about that. My guess is no, probably not.
well, it depends on the rate. I don't know what the rate. I haven't seen the ratings on this, believe it or not. I heard
I
it was
think
PG-13.
I think most things are going to be PG-13, yeah. But anyway, so that one's very low likelihood on mine, but I think Luthen dies, and I think we definitely see Saw get jacked up a bit, so that we see him a little bit closer to what we have in Rogue One. And I have a feeling those would be probably, I think that'll be a pretty violent, because I think they'll show it, because why not?
Jeff is coming with the doozy here. Andor should be about the Geonosians going on strike and unionizing, so it's not only about timely immigration issues, but also about workers' rights. Get everyone mad, I say.
All right, so this is the politics thing I was talking about earlier that are a terrible idea. Thanks, Jeff, for showing us and giving us a clear example of what that would look like.
Miss Sunflower says, Trade Federation, folks, is back to the cameos piece. And Chef came in with, will we see Andor get K2SO? Well, here, I want to touch on that just quickly, briefly, because that, I think you and I were not the biggest fans of. So that was done in a comic. If anybody's not aware of that, they showed the origin story of K2SO and Andor, and I think he programs them kind of on the fly in that episode, if I remember correctly. And that starts their friendship. Wasn't a big fan of the comic. And if they went back and retold this story, I'd be totally fine with that. It could even be something where, like you said, he's messing around with droids midway through the series, and that's kind of it starts to kind of tease out this idea that he's experimenting, or he's got a reason to reprogram these droids, and later on he does it for, I don't know, friendship purposes with K2SO. But even if we ended this first season with him, fully programming K2SO, and that sets up for season 2, which, K2SO gets a start directly from at the beginning, I'd be down with that. But
yeah, I'd be totally cool with a complete retelling, and I think it's highly likely that we will get a refreshed look. They might take a couple of elements. I mean, him reprogramming him while in the heat of a moment or doing something, in between, and it's a rush job. I don't have much problem with some of that, but give it a little bit more. Give it something. Give it something interesting. Yeah, uninspiring. So I think we'll get a refreshed retelling of that origin story. And again, no one will know the difference because I don't think anybody read that comic either.
Well, we did an entire episode on it, so you're welcome.
Right. Yeah, but let's just be honest.
It was a slow news day that day.
It was, yeah. We'll show you the numbers for that episode. They were not great.
Okay. Well, I think I'm done talking about this. I'm hyped enough. I'm ready to watch these episodes. I still don't know if I'm going to stay up to watch these because it's a tough
so it's 10:30 local time here in the Central Zone.
And we can just keep running the show until it starts if you want to do that.
Oh boy,
I'll
man.
Stay awake.
That's 3.5 hours. I mean, we could do it.
Dig in.
No.
But you don't want to talk about? No, I'm kidding. We're not going to do that.
We love our listeners too much to subject them to that.
Oh, some of them would love it, but no, we're not.
Yeah. We'll just let Jeff give us ideas about, more, I don't know, political torture stories.
Oh, he's advocating for the rights of mosquito-looking aliens is what he's doing. So
yeah, something.
Okay. You want to do shout-outs?
Yeah, let's do shout outs. Thank you everyone for listening tonight. We had a great crowd, a lot of fantastic conversation. Jonathan, Steph, Rob, Jennifer, Kathy, Jeff, Risk, Chef Chris, Miss Sunflower, Sky, Lauren, Derpy Gaming, and Richard. We saw you there in the background as well. Thank you guys so much for coming out, guys and gals, of course. And if you are interested in coming out to the live stream, especially as we get into our recaps of each of the episode or each release window, at least each release day, cantinacast.com/YouTube, and you can go and subscribe and hit the little notification bell. We plan to do those on Thursdays, so you'll have a whole 24 hours to or 24 to 46 hours to digest what you've seen and come back and listen to us and hopefully give it justice and hopefully hear your comments in the chat as well, or see your comments in the chat and have you guys be part of the conversation as well. It's so much fun.
We've also got the Patreon episodes that we'll be doing too as part of the Andor series.
That's right.
Unless something comes up, of course, we were going to extrapolate some type of theme or idea that came about one of the episodes, and we've got 3 to pick from for the first one, so that should be a lot of fun. But thematically, we'll pull things out and kind of do a deeper dive into that on the Patreon shows. So if you're not a Patreon member, you can head out to cantinacast.com/Patreon, sign up at the $2 tier. You'll get the bonus episodes. So, and then there's all kinds of other stuff in there if you want that as well. Anything else before we get out of here?
I think that's it. We're finally here, folks. Hope you enjoy the shows and let us know what you think. Find us on social media and Discord, cantinacast.com/Discord. Come talk to us there too.
Yep. All right. Everybody, get some rest. Have fun with Andor. We'll see you guys on the other side in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.